So you've just gotten your concealed carry weapons permit, or maybe you live in a state where you don't have to have one. But regardless, you've made the conscious and informed decision to carry concealed. Where do you go next? There's a lot of different things we need to think about from this point forward. There's a lot of things that change when you want to carry concealed. Probably the most important thing is, are you proficient with that weapon system already? Because proficiency and safety are paramount to moving forward to carrying that constant and concealed and having that as a persistent product on your body. So let's talk about some of the things that we need to think about now that we've chosen to be a concealed weapons permit carrier. First and most importantly, we've got to figure out what handgun do we carry. Lots of different choices. Let's talk with the two simplest choices. Revolver, semi-automatic. I like revolvers. They're unbelievably reliable. You pull the trigger, they bang every time. It's a good choice. It's simple. It's easy to operate. The sizes that are available now are easy to conceal, and they come in almost all calibers. It's a great weapon choice, in my opinion, for someone that doesn't have the time to train as much that a semi-automatic requires. However, I personally carry semi-automatics because I like the capacity. I do a lot of training and I'm very familiar with them. So in my choice, I choose a semi-automatic. You just need to decide what works best for you, but know the benefits and the drawbacks of each. Now, once we decide on what kind of weapon we're going to carry, we need to decide what size weapon we're going to carry. I actually carry all three of the brand that I carry. I have a full size, I have a mid-size, and I have a compact. And I use them for different reasons. My full size goes to the range with me when I'm doing full-time training. It also becomes my duty weapon when I'm doing work that way. Now, when I'm not on duty or training with my full-size weapon, I carry my mid-size. My mid-size offers me everything that my full-size offers me with just a slight amount of less rounds in the magazine. Everything's the same. Controls are the same. It's a striker-fired pistol. Everything remains the same. So the continuity, switching from one to the other, is exactly the same. It's still easy to conceal because it's a mid-size. I've diminished down. I can carry it in a concealed rig no matter how I want to carry it. And then I go to my last option. My last option is my compact. Again, made by the same manufacturer, same caliber. The controls are very, very similar. They change slightly when you go to a compact, which is sometimes the case, but that's okay. I use it in the exact same manner. However, I carry it in a different manner. When I've moved all the way down to my compact pistol, the reason I've done so is so that I can carry it in a deep concealment rig. So again, you just have to look at those and figure out what's right for you. Now, when I make all these determinations on revolver, semi-automatic, full-size, compact, mid-size, I also have to think about the weapon system of choice. You know, I have a very large caliber revolver that I like to carry hunting. It's a fantastic weapon, it's very accurate, and it's highly reliable. But it would be a terrible choice to carry on a daily basis or in a concealed manner. It's an enormous handgun. I'm not going to use it for that. So when we look at things like even competition weapons are capable of very accurate fire, very rapid fire, which sounds like it would be a great choice as a concealed weapon, but that's not necessarily the case. Typically they have much longer barrels, and they also have high protrusion sights that cause snags when you try to draw. So again, just because a weapon's good for hunting or good for competition doesn't mean it's the right choice for concealed carry. What it might mean is since you are already familiar and comfortable with that type of weapon system, perhaps you get another one just like it, made by the same manufacturer, with the same controls, but it's more designed for concealed carry. That would be a better choice. The last thing you need to consider when you're choosing this firearm is you need to remember that whatever you're going to carry all the time is what you really need to be practicing with. I see a lot of people that are comfortable with a particular style of weapon, or they're comfortable with a particular brand of weapon, but then they go and they carry something else. That doesn't make good sense. We need to train with what's going to be readily available and on us all times, and that's going to be our concealed pistol. For instance, if you love shooting your double action revolver, but then you carry a striker-fired pistol with an external safety, the mechanism of action for those is completely different. The way you present them is completely different. Draw a sight picture, remove safeties, all completely different. Again, commonality of systems and making sure that they all jive with each other versus what you're going to practice with and what you're going to carry. You have to make sure those are all in alignment. If not, when the time comes to use that concealed carry weapon, it's not going to be available to you, or something's going to go wrong. And in that kind of situation, that's where we can't take a chance on making mistakes. So now we've decided on a handgun and we got to think about caliber. Here's where it gets interesting. Everybody's got an opinion on caliber. So you go from 22 to 50 A&E, all the way up to 500 Smith & Wesson. You got all these calibers in between. Now, do we really think we can carry a Desert Eagle? Of course not. So we start precluding calibers based on, can we carry that actual caliber in the handgun, the deliverable that we need to carry? Obviously, it starts to eliminate some of the larger cartridges, which is a shame because the larger cartridges are very effective. A lot of people make the argument that 45 is better than 9, 40 is better than 9, 9 is better than 380, whatever. In the organizations that I've worked with, most of them mandated that you must carry a major caliber. In their definition, a major caliber was 9mm and up. So I've always stuck to that principle. What really matters about a cartridge that you choose is not the size of the cartridge, it's not how fast it goes, it's not the size of the projectile. What really matters is the terminal ballistics. If you buy high quality cartridges with high quality projectiles designed to open on impact and pushed at speeds that are appropriate for defense, and bullets that are designed to work through not only human flesh but barriers like car doors and glass and things like that. You need to think about penetration. How far do I need to penetrate into a body? How far? How much is too much? You know, a lot of the problem with rifles is sometimes they tend to over-penetrate. Ball ammunition in a 9mm will do the same thing. So you need to be very, very aware of what the terminal ballistics are. What's that bullet going to do when it gets there? I'm not so sensitive to what size caliber you carry as opposed to what's the effect of my bullet going to be on target. Now, having said that, you also need to look at propellants. Am I looking at short barrels with a high burning propellant that's still going to get me the same speeds? Or am I using a slow burning propellant that I need to get a longer barrel in order to get the maximum effect of the bullet? Again, all of these things come into play. Probably one of the most important things is whatever bullet cartridge combination that you decide you want to carry, use it in the weapon system that you are going to carry. I see so many people that practice with a particular round and then they go load their magazines with a different round and carry it. Now, I'm not saying to buy all of this expensive ammunition and use it at the range on a constant basis. Not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you're going to shoot a 147 grain bullet as a carry round, shoot a 147 grain bullet in practice. Doesn't have to be the same bullet, make sure it's the same weight. But before you decide to conceal that weapon and carry it for personal defense, make sure that you run a couple of mags of that defensive ammo that you're going to carry through that weapon system and make sure that it's going to run correctly with it. After you got that, now you have practice and you have peace of mind and you have the right cartridge to defend yourself if that situation arises. Using that ammunition not only applies to semi-automatics, but it also applies to revolvers. You know, very popular carry round is the .357 Magnum. It works phenomenally well. It's been around for a long time and it's proven itself. However, what we find often is that people want to practice with .38 Special. I get it, a lot less expensive, a little milder recoiling. The problem is, if you get used to shooting .38 Special all the time, and then have to, in a defensive situation, use .357 Magnum, they shoot differently. Even if that difference is slight, that slight difference may make the difference on whether or not you can hit that follow-up shot if your first shot wasn't effective, because now you're dealing and managing different kinds of recoil. So make sure you know that I can manage the rounds that I'm going to carry regardless of the platform that I carry them in. Another consideration is what's comfortable for you to manage. A 70-pound person does not need to be shooting a 230 grain 45. The chances that they're going to be able to accurately manage that recoil with a small frame and small hands is highly improbable. Not saying that somebody can't do it, I'm saying that it's probably not the right choice. Just like someone who is a very competitive shooter that shoots a lot of rounds, has good recoil management, can probably step up the caliber that they carry in a defensive pistol, but again, not to get away from the caliber that they're comfortable with in their competition. So you have to choose something that's comfortable for you to shoot. If it's not comfortable, you A, won't be accurate, B, you won't practice, and C, when you start carrying it, you're just not going to be effective. So find something that's comfortable for you. And the last thing, and the most important thing, is accuracy. You can take the most effective bullet in the world, but if you don't place it where it needed to be, when it needed to be there, it's an ineffective shot. So the most important thing is accuracy. That comes with being comfortable, picking the right cartridge, and then making sure that you practice with it. Once you've got that combination, then you get that last one. And that last one is accuracy, and accuracy is paramount. So we've picked out a pistol. We've decided what caliber it's going to be. We've got our concealed weapons permit. We're ready to start concealed weapons carrying. Probably the next most important step is how we're going to carry this thing. We need to decide what kind of holster to use. Now, deciding on a holster is hugely important. It's hugely important because this is something that's going to be a persistent element on your body at all times when you are dressed. So it needs to be something that's both accessible and comfortable. So before we get into some of the holsters that we have here, let's talk about where on your person you want to carry, or even if it's on your person. I personally like to carry appendix. In other words, I carry my weapon systems in the front of my body. I carry that because I appreciate the front body draw stroke, and I appreciate my ability to defend my pistol when it's here in front of me and I can see it and protect it. It's my opinion. Some people like to carry that way. A lot of people will slide that over to the side and carry it just forward of the hip. Just forward of the hip has a tendency to kick the gun out a little bit. It makes it easy to grab, however, sometimes it also prints, and it'll become a little bit of a burden because you have to change the way you dress and have something a little more baggy to cover up that print. A lot of people will go on the hip or just behind the hip, which will then slide the handle back in towards the back and tuck the pistol away and hide it. Very common. A lot of people do that. It's a fairly easy draw stroke. I don't do it. I feel like I have to make too awkward of a movement to get there. But again, it's because I've become comfortable with training in the appendix carry. It's really all about what you get comfortable with and what works for you. Maybe that doesn't work depending on what you carry, where you sit. Sitting for long term with something in your back or a back rest on your chair may not be the best way to carry for you. Maybe you need to move it more towards the front. Now, besides the way we just talked about to carry appendix, hip, behind the hip, you can also carry off-body. There's some off-body examples up here, and then we'll talk about those as well. Now, some of the things that we don't have covered here are things like shoulder holsters. There's deep concealment rigs. In other words, I carry a subcompact weapon deep in a concealment holster. That's nothing more than a pouch that goes down below your waistline on the front of your body. So again, I'm utilizing the same type of draw stroke as I do with my regular carry, but now I have a deep concealed version as well. So there's ankle holsters. There's all different kinds of ways to carry. Again, you have to decide what's right for you and right for your situation. And that will, a lot of it, be dependent on what your day-to-day routine is. Now, of the things we have here, let's take a look at some of them. Across the front right here, I've got different kinds of on-the-belt systems, or outside-the-belt systems, as some of you will call them. The first two are made of plastic or Kydex. These have become increasingly popular to have this type of holster based on the fact that they're fairly inexpensive to manufacture. Also, you can have one custom bent to be the kind of holster you exactly want it to be, as opposed to buying one off the shelf, or there's lots of commercial versions. They're either made of plastic or Kydex. They're very resilient. They don't hold any moisture. So they're great to keep your firearm from getting rusted. They're just a great option. This different styles have different belt configurations. This one, your belt goes through it and it sits on the outside of your belt. This one is what we call a paddle configuration. In other words, this is molded to fit your hip, and you slide this down behind your belt. So as opposed to attaching your belt to it, this one can just be tucked into your pants over top of your belt. Again, that's another consideration if you have to take your weapon on and off a lot of times, as opposed to having to undo your belt, unlace it from your pants, and get it out of your holster and redress every time. This maybe is an option that you could slide on and off if you had to do it several times a day. So that might be an option. Now, when you go to leather, you'll see the leather styles are just very similar to the Kydex styles. They're just made out of a different medium. Leather is fantastic. It holds up a long time. It's easy to mold to the gun. It works very well. I have some leather holsters as well as some Kydex holsters. I use them for different things. And again, this is another leather holster. Again, one that goes through belt loops. This one has positional belt loops, which is kind of interesting. You need to look at all these options when you look at holsters. This one has the ability to run flat. So in other words, if you ran your belt through here and here, it would run just as we see it. However, it has another belt loop option which allows you to run it in a cant. So now if I put this on my belt, it runs here and here. That cant takes the weapon system and moves it, tilts it forward, and allows some people to have an easier draw stroke or a more presentable draw stroke out of the holster. So if you look at the way that your belt loops are configured on different kinds of holsters, it will tell you how that weapon is going to ride and how you're going to have to present it. Now coming to the back row, these are inside the waistband holsters right in here, these 5. Inside the waistband holsters, very similar to outside, but now you've tucked that weapon inside the waistband, and typically the only part that is exposed is the handle so that you can get a hold of it and make that draw stroke. So inside the waistband holsters are popular with some people, but again, they also can have cant. If you look at this holster, you'll notice that it has a stiffening retention band up here so that it holds the holster open. Now this is important when you're carrying inside the waistband, because when you take your weapon out of the holster, if you don't have some type of a stiffener to keep a leather piece, a leather holster especially, open, then allows the holster, when you draw the weapon out, instead of closing down and not being able to get that weapon back into the holster once you're done with it, or if you don't need it, this would be closed. So by putting a metal stiffener and sewing it in, this allows this holster to stay open after you draw it. Again, nice feature. Now when you go to some of the Kydex options, that's not necessary because that plastic or that Kydex is very stiff. Then you can go into more of what we call a minimalist holster. Minimalist holsters are typically made out of Kydex almost exclusively. There's 2 versions here that are quite popular. This happens to be the version I carry. The version I carry most often is this one. It covers only the trigger well, and the rest of the weapon lays flat in here, but is a very open design. This is very, very similar and protects your trigger guard and is absolutely about the minimalist system you can get. Again, protects your trigger, firearms safe, it's secure inside your waistband, still a great holster, but again, without all the bulk that you have of other holsters. So lots of options when you go either outside the waistband or inside the waistband. Now, there's some other options as well. This holster here is an inside the pocket holster, which is interesting. A lot of pistols now are designed very small. A lot of people like to carry a little backup revolver in their pocket, or maybe they're not wearing pants with a belt and they don't have the belt option. So an inside the pocket gives you the ability to have this that stays in your pocket. It's got a gripper material on it. That gripper material makes the holster stay in your pocket, and when you remove and draw the pistol from it, the gripper material grabs a hold of the pocket and the holster stays in the pocket and the weapon system comes out. Again, a nice, easy way to carry and a safe way to carry, and another option that's available to you. Now, when we talk about off-body carry solutions, these are all on-body carry solutions. We've got them close to us. We've got them inside our pants, attached to our body in some way. There's off-body options too. Off-body options could be something like a purse. This purse is specifically designed for carry. They make specialty purses for people that want to carry in that fashion, and they typically will have some type of a hidden compartment either front or back that allows you to access a handgun. This one actually has a built-in holster inside of it, or some of them have attaching points where you can put the kind of holster you want inside of it. But this allows the person to carry the purse, zip, reach in, and be able to draw a holster from something that looks like it should be carried normally and doesn't draw a lot of attention. Now there's other options too, like this wilderness holster. This wilderness holster looks kind of like a small iPad cover. They make them in different sizes, obviously for different pistols. And again, another discreet way to carry. You put a weapon system in this, a pistol goes in here, it's concealed completely and it doesn't look like a pistol. The whole point of, regardless of what kind of system what kind of holster you get, purse, off-body, pocket system, ankle holster, shoulder holster, deep concealment rig. Regardless of what it is, the whole point is to be concealed. Concealment means that you can put that pistol in a place where it's readily accessible, but no one else can see it. Otherwise, we would be carrying in an open carry configuration. The whole point of this is to carry our weapon in a readily presentable fashion, but nobody else knows we have it. So take a look at all the options that are out there, and there's a lot, but you just have to start narrowing it down by what it is you want to accomplish, how and where you want to carry, and what you want to carry. Just as important as your choice for a holster, you also need to make a good choice with a belt and with an extra magazine pouch. So again, lots of options. We're just going to show you a couple and we're going to talk about some benefits of each one of them. So when you look at magazine pouches, you need to decide how much extra ammunition should I carry? The answer is all of it, or at least all of it that you can comfortably. You should always have as much ammunition as you think you would need in a situation, and maybe even more, because it goes quickly when you need it. So there are double magazine solutions and there are single magazine solutions. Both of these happen to be in a paddle configuration, so you remember the paddles that we looked at earlier. These slide onto the belt, slide on and off. They've got keeper retention bars in the bottom. Those keeper retention bars, you can see them here as well on both sides. Those keeper retention bars allow you to slide them onto your belt and they will semi-lock. What it really is locking it so that when you pull force up to get your magazine out, it allows you to your magazine pouch to stay in place. Now you'll notice there's extremely different sizes to these. One is for double stack magazines and one is for single stack magazines. And we talked about that in the capacity and the size. You also need to remember, okay, how many extra rounds do I need and how much does each magazine hold? You also got to figure out on your body where you're going to carry them. Now, as important as carrying extra ammunition is, a good gun belt will also benefit you greatly. Just like all the other choices in firearms, there's a lot of choices in belts. What you want to look for in a belt is rigidity, how sturdy it is, and is it comfortable to wear. They're going to come in different sizes. This is a typical 1-inch leather belt. The 1-inch leather belt is very common. If you're wearing one, people won't suspect that you're wearing a handgun just because you're wearing this particular belt. It looks very much like a lot of other dress belts. However, gun belts, if they're specifically made to be so, are made with very high quality leather. They are made much thicker than normal belts, and a lot of times they're two pieces of leather sandwiched around some type of a stiffener. Now the stiffener is not as common in leather belts as it is in nylon belts, but that stiffener is very important because when you're loading extra gear onto that belt and hoping that that belt and using that belt to support it, you need to have a very stiff and rigid belt. So when we go to a nylon belt, for instance, this coming up from a 1-inch is a 1.5 inch. This 1.5 inch specifically is designed, instead of having metal buckles, it has plastic buckles, the plastic friction rings on it, and then Velcro to tuck back the tab. So it's multi-adjustable. As you add gear, obviously your belt profile gets bigger. So having the high adjustability gives you the room to put other gear. And as you go inside the waistband, that obviously moves your belt out a little farther too. So having lots of adjustability is good. This one also is made not as rigid. It has two pieces of nylon which stiffen it, but it does not have an internal stiffener. And when we go all the way back to the other side, this belt is kind of a combination of both. This is a 1 inch, this is a 1.5, this one's 1.25 inches wide. I like a 1.25 inch belt. It fits most belt loops. It'll even fit dress pants that have smaller belt loops, but it'll also be fine with jeans or even with tactical clothing. It's one belt that I can use for a lot of different things. A tactical belt like this is also made of nylon, but unlike this one that has a little more flexibility, this belt has a stiffener in it, and that stiffener keeps the belt in a round configuration that allows it to stand away from your body and not bind and pinch. It's also good when you're taking something on and off the holster system to have that rigidity, because as you insert it and remove it, if the belt is too loose or too flexible, it will bind instead of allowing you to take that gear on and off when you want it to. The rigid belts support most gun systems. They'll support anything that you add on it, and typically they come with some type of a heavy-duty buckle system. This one is an especially heavy-duty buckle system, a Cobra buckle, and it has a lot of tensile strength, and it will hold this belt. This will never come undone until you want it to be so. It also has an adjustable capability. You draw the buckle back, and again, so as your gear choices expand or the size of your waist expands based on what you're tucking into it on gear, this belt will expand with you. So belts, you need rigidity, you need flexibility, and you need comfortability. As long as you have those things, you can stack all the accessories you need for concealed carry on top of it. Of critical importance when you're carrying concealed is the clothes you wear. It's really funny to me that people try so hard to conceal that they end up actually wearing clothing that shows they're concealing. Well, that kind of defeats the purpose. Now, when you wear something that's going to conceal a weapons system, you got to remember, what kind of holster are we carrying it in? How are we carrying it? Why are we carrying it? And more importantly, what are we doing while we're doing it? So, just because you have a concealed weapons permit does not mean that you can present or show your weapons system. That's not what it's for. It's to keep your weapon concealed. That's your permit. That's your authorization. So that should be your goal. Now, inadvertently flagging. Let's talk about that. There are laws in place in a lot of states that say, should your shirt be a billowy shirt and it blows up and shows that you are carrying a concealed weapon, that is not your fault and that is not prosecutable. However, you need to know if that law exists in your state. Most states have that. That being said, though, if we're carrying concealed, we probably shouldn't be wearing something that could billow up in the wind, especially if we live in a windy place. So, when you're going to be carrying, think about, is my weapon accessible? Can I get to it? Is what I'm wearing comfortable? And more importantly, is what I'm wearing appropriate to the environment and the condition that I'm going to be in? If my whole carry philosophy is that I'm going to carry in a tactical vest or a cool guy vest with an internal pocket, that works great if I'm in an environment that is cold enough to do so. But if I'm in the middle of Florida in the summertime, that's not going to work at all. I'm going to stick out like a sore thumb because I'm working too much to try to hide my weapon and not working hard enough to try to blend into my environment. If you work in a suit every day, you need to tailor the way you carry. If you work at a job site doing physical work every day, you're going to need to tailor the way you carry. If you work in a place where you wear no shirt and shorts, you need to think about that as well. So fitting into your environment is just as important as concealing that weapon and having it readily presentable when you need it. But again, the most important thing to focus on about concealed carry and the clothes we wear is to keep it concealed. So now that we've got a lot of the things picked out, our weapon, our caliber, our holster, our belt, we've talked about the clothing we're going to conceal our weapon system in. Now we need to talk about training. Training is going to change when we decide to conceal carry, because our most likely form of presentation from this point on is from a concealed carry position, which means the most important part of our training now becomes presentation. That doesn't mean that all the other characteristics of training, sight alignment, trigger control, breathing, putting rounds on target accurately, is always going to be paramount. And the mechanical skills that get you that accuracy are always going to be the most important. What's going to change when you go to concealed carry is now, how do I present that weapon from a concealed carry location? How do I uncover it? How do I dive into it and dig it out? And then how does my presentation change based on where around my body I'm carrying that handgun? Or if I'm carrying it off my body, how do I get to it and present it as well? So the whole focus of our training now changes from all of those fundamentals we've always used, whether we were pulling our pistol out of a range bag and setting it on the table to shoot it, or drawing it from an open carry holster, or however it was that we had that handgun in our hand. Now we have to focus on the next part. And the next part, and most important part in that concealed, is learning to and being comfortable with being fast and accurate so that we can present it with the correct mechanics and the correct way to still maintain our accuracy. Because now that we're decided to carry for concealed carry, it is our job to protect ourselves and to protect others around us. So it is of paramount importance that we be able to get to that weapon when we need it. So that's how we're going to change and look at our training from this point forward. So that's a lot that we covered. We tried to cover all of the broad stroke issues, all of the changes that are going to happen, all the differences that you need to address when you're looking at concealed carry. Now, what this doesn't cover is all of the training aspects. We still need to learn how to change mags from concealment. We still need to learn about threat presentation. We still need to learn about covering concealment, how we work in a crowd, because we might possibly be in crowded environments carrying this concealed weapon. There are lots of laws to learn. There's a lot to learn in general. This is an overview. This is to get you thinking about, do I have the right clothing? Do I have the right holster? Have I picked the right pistol? Do I have the right ammunition? Even all the way down to we wanted to address belts. All of these things are considerations that maybe you haven't thought of. Maybe you have. But all of them are good considerations when you want to go to the next level and go into concealed carry. Once you get there, and with the help of this information, you make the right choices, now you're able to search out that training. Now you're able to look for those instructors that can give you that next level of experience to do the concealed carry work. And then you're safe and the people around you are safer because you're a responsible, armed, concealed carry citizen.